What's going on, guys? My name is Matt, and for the past few years my storage solutions have been not optimal, to say the least. From various sizes on internal drives to a bunch of random external drives, I've never really had a good way to store my data. So when Synology reached out and asked if I wanted to review one of their products, I was more than happy to test one out and see how a NAS worked for me. Now, I've done research on standalone units in the past, and Synology is a name that pops up a lot, and the general consensus is that they create quality products. Now, yes, you can build your own NAS, which has its advantages and disadvantages, and I'll be covering that topic in a future video, but today I'm going to be looking at this unit and give you my thoughts and opinions, and tell you my experience with setting it up and using it. So before we get ahead of ourselves, let's discuss what a NAS is for those of you out there who don't know. The word NAS is just an acronym that stands for Network Attached Storage. Basically, it's a storage server that can be accessed either over your local network, or can even be accessed when you're away from home because it's connected to the internet. The cloud where you store your files you access over the internet is just a NAS that someone else owns. Having one is like having your own personal cloud and allows you to consolidate multiple users' data in one place with generally some data protection. This protection comes in the form of RAID, which is just a set of hard drives configured in a way to prevent data loss. Depending on the configuration of the RAID array, one or more drives can fail and you'll lose no data whatsoever, and you can pop in a new drive and rebuild the array. So now that you have a basic understanding of what a NAS is, let's go ahead and talk about the Synology model that I'm showing off today. This is the Synology DiskStation DS1019 Plus. This is a pretty full-featured NAS with tons of ability beyond just being a file server. This unit is directed at prosumers and small businesses who need a reliable file server that meets many needs. The DS1019 comes neatly packed, and when you open it, you find a quick start guide and accessories, including 2 Ethernet cables and the power adapter. Synology includes everything you might need to get up and running, which is nice to see. Below this accessory section is the NAS itself, wrapped with a thin layer of soft material to prevent scratches during shipping. Getting the unit out of the wrapping, I was really impressed with the size and looks of this guy. These DiskStations look cool online and look even better in person. It was also cool to see just how small it was. One big advantage of buying a pre-built NAS like this one is the fact it's so compact and won't take up a lot of room. On the front of the device, we find the 5 3.5-inch drive bays. These you could theoretically fit 16 terabyte drives into for a total of 80 terabytes of raw capacity, which is a crazy amount of data in a very small package. The front also features the power button, LED drive indicators, and a USB 3 port. The top of the unit is blank, and the 2 sides have the Synology name/logo with ventilation built into the lettering. On the back, we find 2 92mm cooling fans. These stay pretty quiet in my experience. There's also dual RJ45 1GB LAN ports. These support link aggregation, which basically means they can run in parallel, increasing the throughput to up to 2 gigabits per second. The back also has a Kensington lock, a USB 3 port, an eSATA port, and the power input. The power adapter for this guy is kind of big and bulky, but having the AC to DC power converter outside of the unit keeps it more compact. Other than the little venting and 4 rubberized feet, the bottom has these 2 little hatches which contain one of the coolest features of the DS1019 Plus. Under each of these is an NVMe M.2 slot. This allows for an SSD cache without the need to take up normal SATA drive slots. You can use one NVMe drive to act as a read cache for frequently used files, or if you have 2, then you can enable a feature that's super useful. This is write cache, which has the ability to transfer your files to the SSD first, then have the DiskStation automatically transfer it to the RAID array. This allows you to transfer files to the server very quickly, keeping the drive you're transferring from occupied for much less time. Setting this guy up was super simple, which is another big plus of pre-built units. The entire process from closed box to ready to use file server was surprisingly quick. The first thing to do before plugging it in is to install the drives you're going to be using. Now, you don't want to use just any old hard drives. You want to make sure you're using NAS specific drives. The big difference between these and normal hard drives is these drives are designed for 24/7 operation. Not only this, but generally NAS drives have better anti-vibration designs and better heat resistance, which is important because all the drives are closely packed together, meaning things can get pretty hot pretty quick. The drives I'm using are these 3 6TB Toshiba N300 NAS drives, which as the name implies are designed for NAS use and run at 7200 RPM. Even though this is 18 terabytes of storage, when everything's said and done, I'll only be left left with 12 terabytes because of the need for redundancy, which I'll talk about more later in the video. Installing these is super simple. You just use this little key that comes in the box to unlock each of the drive bays that you're going to be using, then pull from the bottom to unlatch each drive caddy and pull them out one at a time. These lightweight caddies are toolless. You just pop out these two rails on either side, place your drive in, making sure to orient it in the correct way. To secure the drives, you reinstall the plastic rails, which have nubs that fill the tiny holes that normally would be occupied with screws. Next, you just slide each of the drives into place, making sure they go in and connect fine. And then finally, you can lock them up with the key. I'm not starting out with NVMe cache, but if I was, now would be the time to install it. With that being said, it's super simple to add these drives as cache later down the line, which is definitely something I'm going to be doing in the future. With the drives installed, it meant it was time to get this guy set up and ready to go. I moved the NAS near my router, plugged it into power, and plugged the two provided Ethernet cables from the unit to my router. Next, I headed over to my computer where I accessed the NAS through a web browser. I just typed in find.synology.com, which searches your local network for your device. Once found, you set up your account and get a URL you can type in from anywhere to access your device. Once done setting up an account and naming your NAS, you enter into DiskStation Manager, or DSM for short. This is Synology's custom operating system that allows you to interface with your NAS. I got a quick rundown of the basic features within DSM, and once that was done, it was time to make a very important decision, which was how was I going to configure my array of drives. I clicked on File Station, then hit Create New Volume. With 3 drives, my options were either to go with RAID 5 or SHR, which is Synology's hybrid RAID system. I ended up going with RAID 5. This gives me 12 terabytes of usable storage, and any one drive can fail and I'll be able to keep all my data. RAID can be kinda hard to wrap your head around at first. It basically stripes parity bits across the array for redundancy. I'll link a video explaining this in much more detail in the description down below. It's pretty interesting how it works, and understanding how RAID works is pretty useful knowledge. After going through all of these prompts, I let the machine build the array, and when it was done, I was left with a single volume with around 12 terabytes of storage. Writing to this RAID 5 array can be pretty slow, but read performance is decent. The 12 terabytes was very much needed, as now that I'm shooting videos exclusively in 4K, it means projects like the Sleeper PC build can have up to 100 gigabytes of raw video files. Obviously, I'll probably not need the vast majority of those clips, but having the option to grab full bitrate files from old video projects to use in current projects is very useful and something I do all the time. To add files to my array of drives is as simple as opening the folder in DSM File Manager I want the files to go, drag the files from Windows Explorer to your browser, drop, and your files will start to transfer. Not only can I access this on my local network, but I can access my files from anywhere I have an internet connection. I also have the ability to share these files with others, which for very large files would sometimes require a paid service like WeTransfer Pro. Taking our attention away from the file server aspect of things, the DSM interface has a crazy amount of functionality, and I personally haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible. If we head into the package center within DSM, which is basically like an app store, you'll find tons and tons of options to add functionality to your NAS. You can use this guy as a Plex media server, you could use this as an email server, or even host a website from it. And the cool thing about the DS1019 Plus is that it can do a lot of this at the same time because it has some pretty decent specs. Other than the drive bays and ports mentioned earlier, the core specs of this machine are a quad-core Intel Celeron CPU with 8 GB of RAM. This will allow you to make this NAS fit your exact needs. It means it's able to run most anything within DSM you throw at it. Now let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty and talk about price. The DSM 1019 Plus is not cheap at around $640, and that's before factoring in the cost of drives. Is this the best price to performance NAS possible? No, you could definitely build one cheaper, but if you do, you're missing out on a lot of what a Synology DiskStation is offering. This DS1019 Plus is an elegant solution for having a NAS with other functionality. It took me all of 30 minutes to set up. It takes up almost no room. It consumes very little power at around 35 to 50 watts from the wall, and the DSM software is incredibly simple to use, even for a server noob like myself. So is a Synology NAS worth it, and more specifically, is the DS1019 Plus worth it? I would say for some yes, and for some no. If you want a reliable, compact NAS that you can get up and running quickly and don't have to do a crazy amount of tinkering with, then I think the price premium of going with a Synology NAS is worth it. If you're super tight on cash and have a lot of free time to build, set up, and tinker with it, building your own NAS might be for you. For me, having a simple, reliable, and downright elegant solution like a DS1019 Plus is awesome, and I can highly recommend it as the experience it gives is great. So yeah guys, there's my thoughts and my experience with the DS1019 Plus. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up as well as consider subscribing, and this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.